I'm Edie Lush. I'm here in the Hub Culture Pavilion in Davos. Very pleased now to be joined by Carl Ganter. He's the founder and director of Circle of Blue. Now, you've been doing a lot of work on water, one of the interesting subjects we've been talking a lot here in the pavilion about. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing, what you're here at Davos to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Circle Blue is the leading platform for news, science, and data focused on global water issues. So we use the superheroes in those fields, and we dispatch them into the field to find out what's happening. So we roll up our sleeves and we get dirty. And then we take the data, we take the narrative stories, and then we package that and publish that. But what that gives us is a chance to look at the major trends. And some of the major trends we're seeing, and one of the major themes here in Davos, is the water, energy, food nexus. In fact, they published a new book, Water Security, with that subtitle. And that led us to look at something we call a choke point between water and energy. Looking at these big collisions, where are the big trends? And one of the big trends we spotted is that in the U.S., this is through our reporting, a big series we published last summer, through our reporting is that the U.S. and other major economies, but the U.S. is facing just around the corner a major collision point between water supply and energy demand. It takes a lot of water to extract the hydrocarbons to generate the power. It takes a lot of water to run the power plants.
And there aren't any restrictions on these companies as well, is that correct?
Well, there are restrictions, but we also found that when farmers have to deal with allocations, usually the oil and gas industry, which uses a lot of water for high pressure, they call it fracturing, underground extraction, they don't have to deal with the same restrictions. And then there are also pollution issues. But as the nation, as the U.S. grapples with a growing demand for energy, it just does not have, the numbers don't line up, it does not have the water supplies to generate that energy. So then we took this to China. So we like to ask really dumb questions or simple questions.
I like those kind of questions.
That nobody else can answer. So we took this to China and said, let's look at choke point China.
So that's the report you've got coming out.
This is the report that's coming out. And so what we did is we did unprecedented access to data sets, to locations, to construction sites, and things like this, experts. And then what we did is unfolded the same story in China. And we found that, you know, in another one of the world's most important economies, that the biggest impediment to China's growth will be its water supply. And the biggest impediment to its energy, its capacity to generate energy, will be its water supply. Now, circling back to climate, that has huge implications because China runs on coal. Some 80% of China's electricity is generated from coal. They are going to move as much water as possible to those coal fields. It takes a lot of water to extract and treat and process coal as possible. So they need water. The water's in the south. Coal fields are in the north. They're transferring the water to the north to extract the coal. At the same time, they're also applying a lot of really new technologies because some of the engineers, a lot of people see this coming. So on one side, massive engineering projects. On the other side, massive clean energy projects, wind energy, solar, but at the same time, coal is still king in China.
So what I've heard about China, and please tell me what the truth is that the Chinese know this, and that they are moving, as you mentioned, very quickly to other forms of energy, cleaner energy. Are you saying that it's not happening as fast as we think?
Well, they are moving to other forms of clean energy, and you have to remember too that some forms of clean energy are actually more water intensive. Okay, but wind and solar, they're moving that way, but their growth patterns, and we'll be able to show you in our reports the different charts and graphs that show this, but the clean energy is still going to stay a tiny percentage of their supply. And so to meet that, water is the choke point. And then add climate change on top of that, that becomes the multiplier. So you move the water, but if there's less water to move, if there's less water from the Himalayas, they build the big construction projects, will they even be able to fill these projects with water, which then transfers to coal, which then transfers back to the power plants.
And what's next after China? What's the next choke point that you're going to look at?
Oh boy, where not? We'll be doing a major project on the Great Lakes, looking at water, energy, and climate in the Great Lakes and the impacts. There are some, I wouldn't say necessarily obvious, but a lot of impacts on the Great Lakes climate-wise that really have not been explored. And then look at another piece of this is where will industry locate as water supplies become more and more scarce? They're going to migrate toward the water. And we did a big sustainability GlobeScan survey last March globally, and that was one of the key locations in the world that they found that industry will be moving to is the Great Lakes. We need the Great Lakes for water, for power, and for manufacturing and general industry. So that's one of the big trends. So we like to stay out ahead of the stories. That's one of our big trend pieces that we'll be doing.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for stopping into the Hub Pavilion here in Davos, and I'm Edie Lush.